All right, and I think we're ready to start. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Chalet. I am the president of the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society, also known as the AHA Society, and we thank you so much for joining us this evening for a conversation with the curators of a brand new virtual exhibit about Alexander Hamilton. The AHA Society is a national organization dedicated to education about the life and legacy of founding father Alexander Hamilton. And today's program is part of our Happy Birthday Hamilton commemoration held annually around January 11th, which is the day that his birthday is commemorated. And we thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to learn more about the AHA Society, please visit theahasociety.org. And you can learn how to become a member or about our future programming and sign up for a mailing list. We'd love to have you join us. To share a little bit more, the exhibit is called Alexander Hamilton, Indispensable Founder and Visionary. It is a collection of images and items about Alexander Hamilton's life, and it includes materials from Alexander Hamilton's early years in the Caribbean, his service in the Revolutionary War, his vital contributions to the founding of the United States. Several of the images and artifacts are very rare and have rarely been shown in public, if at all, for some of the images. So it's a really special exhibit, and this is a special event to talk about how this exhibit came together. Our two curators who will be speaking tonight, we have John Herzog, who began an active business career at Herzog, Hein and Gettel, which was founded in 1926 and acquired by Merrill Lynch in 2000. He is formerly the chairman of R.M. Smythe & Co. Inc., which is one of the world's premier auction houses, specializing in antique stocks and bonds, banknotes, coins, autographs, and photographs. He also, in 1988, founded the Museum of American Finance, donating part of his extensive collection of financial memorabilia to the museum. The museum is an affiliate of the Smithsonian Institution, and John Herzog also serves on the board of the AHA Society. Mariana Oller is a founding member and chair of the AHA Society. She is also Associate Curator of Special Collections at Wellesley College. Her responsibilities in this capacity include collections management and preservation, creating exhibitions, and providing course-integrated instruction to students. And I do encourage you to visit our Happy Birthday Hamilton page to read the many other contributions of these two individuals. But for now, I would like to give them a warm welcome and thank them for sharing their talents with us this evening and for this exhibit. A warm round of applause, I'm sure, by all, even though they are muted. Mariana, I would like to invite you at this time to share a little bit about the exhibit and show us how it can best be accessed. This exhibit did go live at noon Eastern Time yesterday, which was January 10th, 2021, and it is available for all to access for free. And Mariana will give us a little bit of background on the best way of viewing the exhibit and some of the images of note.
Thank you, Nicole, and welcome to everyone. I'm so glad to see you all here today. I will be sharing right now the opening screen where you will find our online exhibit. So this is a site that we created in Omeka. And Omeka is an open source content management system, basically a program where you could develop your own collection descriptions and then build exhibits out of those descriptions. So you see the AHA Society Omeka site. And the entry to our exhibit is right here on. And by the way, I just wanted to mention that this year is the AHA Society's 10th anniversary. So our first online exhibit has been put up to celebrate this great achievement for the AHA Society. And in order to enter the exhibit, all you need to do is click on the link here. And you will see the introductory page for the exhibit. you will see on the right side a menu. Basically, all the sections of the exhibit are easily accessible through links. So if you do not wish to follow necessarily the order of the exhibit, you might jump straight to a section that you would like to see. Let's say you might want to focus on the soldier in the revolution. You can click there and that will send you immediately to the beginning of that section. Each section has different amount of labels, different number of images presented. So this particular one that I opened is Hamilton during the Revolutionary War. So that's one of my favorite sections. And it has lots and lots of images and information that you could enjoy. Once you are done with a section, you can either return to the menu on top, or else you can follow the link to the next section right here on the bottom of the page, and you would jump immediately to the next section. So when you're looking at the images, you will notice that they're not all that big on your screen, but all you need to do is click on the image to focus on the detailed description of it. And then you will continue clicking until you bring it to the size that you wish to look at it. In order to get out of it, all you need to do is backtrace, just get out of along the same path that you got in, and you will return back to the main page. So the exhibit has now, it has 10 sections. Well, we never thought that it's going to be that big, but it kept on growing. So you will notice that at the very end, after acknowledgements, you will also find a way where you can look at only the images of the whole exhibit presented by section title. So all the early life of Neva's exhibit images will be in one place, and followed by the next section, and so on. So you can enjoy it in different ways. If you're more interested quickly to see what kind of images we have, you'll be able to do so. And remember to just click into the image and continue clicking in until you get the biggest possible image on your screen. So this software has allowed us to enter information about each image and then create an exhibit out of those images. Of course, the text we enter separately. So if you have any questions about how to navigate, please let us know during our presentation. I will step out of the exhibit now so that we could continue with some of our discussions.
Thank you, Mariana. I really would like to start this dialogue with you, John, because really so much of the collection is based on your incredible collection. And I would love for you to share how you became interested, not only in this time period, but collecting in general, and what was the general story behind that?
Well, it all started in 1959, which seems like a very long time ago now. And I was a young broker. I had just begun working for my father, and he was not doing much business at that time. And I had no accounts to bring with me. So doing business with was a puzzle. And I was living in the village then in a small apartment. I went out for a walk one day and passed an antique shop. And as I was looking in the window, I saw that there was a certificate in the window, and it was marked $5. And I went in and I thought, I bought the certificate, and I thought, I'm going to frame it as you see and hang it up in my office. And when Mariana comes to visit me, she'll see it. She'll think it's interesting also. I will steer the conversation to investing and get a new account. So that was the plan. I got home with this certificate and I was holding it in my hand, and I noticed that this signature was William H. Vanderbilt. Well, I was surprised. I did not know much about anything at that time, but I knew that I wanted another certificate signed by someone of that ilk. So I instantly put an ad in a collector's newspaper, and pretty soon people around the country, dealers and other people who had certificates, were writing to me, and I started to write checks. And then after a while, I thought, I'm writing these checks. I don't really have so much money. What am I going to do if I decide to stop collecting? How will I sell this stuff? And there was no market for certificates at that time. I was one of the first people to begin collecting certificates. That is in America. In Europe, there were a couple of people. And so I thought about that, and I thought, because the autograph market was the place to look if you wanted to buy certificates and similar things, I thought, well, I'm going to specialize in the stocks and bonds of the American Revolutionary period, the federal period, because the people who signed those have now been in the public markets for 2 centuries. They are well-known names, and regardless of whether the market for those names was up or down, I knew that there would be a market. So I made that decision, and I began to collect the documents of the federal period. That was a very good decision. It turns out, and it did develop, that that was the cream of the crop in the collecting area because of the history of the United States and because these documents are so very interesting. And as I continued to collect, I thought, well, this is so very interesting. I wanted Americans generally to know more about this period because these documents are so very interesting. And I had lots of wonderful experiences as a collector, and I'm going to share one of those with you. I was walking to work one day, and I saw this image in an antique shop window. This is the taking of Major Andre, the British officer who had stolen the plans for West Point. And I wanted to buy that, but the antique shop was closed. I returned the next day, bought this thing that was in an old frame, and I decided that I would put it in a new frame. So I began to unframe what I had bought, and sure enough, a cockroach walked out of the frame. And so that's the sort of thing that I realized I had to expect collecting a new kind of collectible. And when I let that be known around as much as I could, we got calls from people and they said, come to my home and look in my attic. And we did that, and sure enough, they were wonderful things. And they wanted to sell that stuff, and here we were. And so I loved the fascination of the collecting. My enthusiasm was a great asset in this. And I also realized that in addition to the signatures that appeared, I also wanted to have an image of the individuals, or an image that could be associated with the document. And so for some of these, that was easier than others. And during my collecting years, I have found some wonderful things. This is a document that was prepared for the financing of the effort to end Shays' rebellion. So this is part of the big American history story. And here is the way that the local government was going to deal with it. Then the Congress and others realized that we needed to have a navy. And so this is a document that is the financing document for the USS Constitution. And I thought that was pretty amazing to find that. And I then went to visit the US Constitution in Boston, and it is a wonderfully preserved ship, and there is a museum now for that ship. Of course, knowing Hamilton as I got to know Hamilton, I didn't know much about him in the beginning, but he is a very interesting personality to study and learn about. And one of his greatest achievements was the creation of the US Treasury bond. The US Treasury bond was invented by Hamilton in 1790, more or less. And by the early 1800s, it was a very well accepted institutional investment. And this one, you may be able to see, it's made out to the president and fellows of Harvard College. I would find a document like that somewhere in some dealer's inventory, and I got so excited about that. To find that kind of evidence of, first of all, the nation, and second of all, a college as old as Harvard. And I just thought that was such a wonderful thing. The US Treasury bond now is the most highly respected debt instrument in the world. Other nations have large positions in US Treasury bonds. We don't always know exactly where those Treasury bonds are, but the market for Treasury bonds is a very, very special and active market. And that is another testimonial to Hamilton's marvelous creative mind. In learning about him, I have thought that he was at least one or two generations ahead in his thinking of any of his contemporaries. And so I have loved him a long time. And I realized only in the last year or two, I was thinking about it. I have been collecting these things for 60 years. And Hamilton has always been on the currency, or this is a United States Treasury bond issued during the Civil War, and there is Hamilton's image as Mariana is just pointing to it. And he has always been on the currency. He's the only one who has been on the currency always with George Washington. So in spite of the fact that sometimes his reputation had suffered, in Washington, where they knew what he had done, and the Treasury Department made sure that he was always on the currency. And it just is, for me, these documents are so exciting, and they tell me so much about the nation. It's just been marvelous for me. Well, let me stop there and not go on too long. But
thank you, John. That is so wonderful. And I thank you so much for taking the time to bring these other items out of your collection to show tonight. It's very special for all of us here to see these incredible items in your hand. So thank you. Mariana, you have such an impressive special collections background. What did it mean to you to work on this exhibit?
Well, I absolutely love working with primary sources. That could be manuscripts, could be early printed books, could be objects. And this is the kind of material that John has been collecting. When I first discovered the wealth of this incredible collection, it was just overwhelming just to think that in front of me are documents that have never been seen, or often no one else has seen, but just either another owner or a dealer perhaps of that kind of documents. It opens a new world to me. It is incredible to handle materials like that. I'm thrilled to do that on my job as special collections curator. And in all my years in working in rare book libraries and special collections, it has been an experience that is a privilege to be able to handle those materials, to learn from them, it's just so exciting to hold them in your hands, to know that they were touched by our forefathers, that you're learning from, just from holding the same documents. You could not get any closer to experiencing, basically transporting yourself in time, learning much more about the period, the subject of your studies. It's an incredible opportunity, and having all these Hamilton-related objects, manuscripts, it was a thrill for me. So from day one, when I discovered the collection, it has been exciting, and it continues to be so because you could interpret the collection in so many ways.
Thank you, Mariana. And John, just going back to Mariana's comment about how some of these images are being shown publicly for the first time, what does that mean to you to have this sort of opportunity to share these images?
Oh, I am thrilled. I realized during my active business years in the trading business, our firm was a NASDAQ trading firm. I went out and spoke to public groups and so on. I realized that Americans do not really know much about the capital markets. In America, which is a country that operates on the profit motive, it is a good idea to understand the capital markets. And that's the reason that I wanted to begin the Museum of American Finance, the first such museum in the world. And for me to have this opportunity to bring these documents and these images to a wider public audience is just the most exciting time. I've been thrilled to do this, and I'm hoping that this will not be the last exhibit, but only the first.
Fabulous. And we've touched on it a little bit, but could both of you speak to your background on creating exhibitions, Hamilton or otherwise?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Well, when I founded the Museum of American Finance in 1988, I did not know a great deal about creating exhibits. But then the museum needed to have exhibits. People came to see us and the museum. They wanted to see something. So I started to learn about that, and that was very interesting. And I've been doing that for some 30 years. And then I also created exhibits. I created special Hamilton exhibits with Mariana at the Museum of Finance, and also at the Pequot Library with Diana and I created a Hamilton exhibit there that was very popular, and the local school teachers made that exhibit a requirement for their courses, and I thought that was a wonderful outcome. And I have had exhibits at the Union League Club in the city and in a few other places, but I do have quite a bit of experience. And I have accumulated, I've always looked for unusual looking things that were not too big, so that when it came time for an exhibit, I had a lot of the objects already. I did not have to go out and look for them. So that's been a great, great joy to me to bring these objects to the attention of a wider audience is a privilege for me.
Thank you, John. And you, Mariana?
I have worked on many exhibits during my time at the Houghton Library at Harvard and at Wellesley College as well. It is a part of what the curators do. It's basically you want to feature the collections for many different reasons. So the Houghton Library had a special exhibition room. That's what they have. It's huge. It has 10 cases, wall cases as well. So a lot of opportunity to show the collections. And I was thrilled to work on exhibits there, just to fill the cases with wonders, indeed wonders of the world, because as you can imagine, the Harvard Rare Book and Manuscript Library is full of those. One thing that I realized is that while you work with those collections, you become very familiar with them and you feel like they're part of your life. You don't get as surprised anymore by seeing a wonder in front of you every day. But you realize when you leave the place and you no longer have that opportunity, that's when you realize how much you're missing by this interaction. But luckily for me, I went to work at Wellesley College, where I've been for the last 20 years. And the collection there is amazing. It's much bigger than that kind of a size of a college would have. It is a teaching collection. It's used all the time to teach the undergraduate students at Wellesley. And for me, to work with those collections, to present them in form of exhibits, it's a thrill. And another excitement is that I get to teach students how they can put up exhibits on subjects that they may be interested in as well. So that is something that I treasure in my work at Wellesley.
And you know, I want to add that when I look at my collection, I look at these documents and I get a thrill out of that. I get a genuine thrill. And to me, the magnificent attributes of finance are clear. And I think that finance is a very creative area. Unfortunately, in the media these days, finance is suffering. However, that's not the way it really is. Nothing happens without finance. And when I collected, I always was wondering when you go to Jones Beach, for instance, well, who paid for that? Who paid for the Brooklyn Bridge? I have a Brooklyn Bridge bond, and it's not a fake. And I am very interested in letting a greater wide audience understand how finance can be made to be a beautiful asset in our lives instead of being a problem area. Should not be a problem area. And I realize that there are issues that need to be carefully managed in finance. And that is one of the challenges.
Thank you, John. And going a little bit more into this specific exhibit, could you walk us through the process of creating it? How did you decide what items to include? How did you go through the collection in the first place? Can you give us a little behind the scenes look from both of you? Whoever wants to answer first.
Well, I'm going to start by explaining that that's truly our first online exhibit, both for John and me. In our experience, we have never done an online exhibit. We have always worked with the actual materials, setting them up in cases, with everything that goes along with that kind of work. So this was something new, entirely new. And just to give you a little bit of the background, why did it come right now? Well, you can all imagine, why are we all at home talking through Zoom? Well, it's the pandemic, of course, and it made us think, what else can we do to be out there with the public, to be able to bring Hamilton to the public? So, of course, online exhibit would be, well, the first thing that pops in my mind, how can we feature these wonderful collections, these wonderful images that we have, how we can come across to convey everything that we want to convey about Hamilton to the general public. So that's how we started in the summer. The process would be, well, what kind of platform are we going to use? So that was the first question, and I had to do a little bit of research. I had experience with some platforms, but Omeka, the one that we used, is an open source platform, and it's favored by many small libraries and museums because it's easy to use. You don't have to pay a lot of money to maintain it. And just you navigate very easily around, and you can easily create your collection within Omeka and then feature whatever exhibits you like out of the materials that you have entered in the collection description. So we settled on Omeka, and we moved along to thinking of, well, we should decide on the main points, what about Hamilton's life we would like to feature, what kind of focus we're going to give to the exhibit. Then once we decided on the several major periods of Hamilton's life and what exactly we want to bring forward, then we started reviewing the items in John's collection to see what would make sense to feature. And sometimes we had to make tough choices because we wanted to show much more, but we had a limited, you know, we don't want to overwhelm our viewers. So we started by making a few good selections, you know, among the items, and then whatever images we couldn't find, but we needed to support our narrative, then we looked at elsewhere, other places and other institutions as well.
And I felt that I had accumulated a number of wonderful images, and I love the images. You know, we all, first thing I do when I get a new book and see if there are any pictures. And so I love to have an image that is really noteworthy. And I think that you will enjoy a number of the images in this presentation.
Well, just the final steps would, of course, we had to write the text and edit it with the help of many. So it was wonderful to review everything before it went live. And the final touches would be just to make sure that everything displays well and it's easily navigable, and everybody will be able to access it.
Were there any surprising differences in creating an online exhibit versus an in-person exhibit, or there's special challenges that you might not have originally thought you'd have to face?
Yeah, definitely. There are all sorts of difficulties, and learning to use the Omeka platform, that was not a 5-minute exercise. That took, Mariana is the one who learned that, and it took some time to become really good at it. And so when we would work on the exhibit, there would be lots of, oh, wait a minute, I pressed the wrong key, and we have to go back to this one, and we have to go back to that one. And working on this was very tiring. We would spend a few hours together in front of a computer screen, and that was tiring, but we loved it anyway. The effort was something that we both enjoyed, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, well, and of course, there are a lot of differences between putting up an exhibit with original materials and digital exhibit. So the concerns are different when handling primary sources, when handling manuscripts. You have to have all the knowledge and experience to make sure that they are protected in the cases, that they have the right conditions, temperature-wise, humidity, light, security of the cases, everything comes along with when you're thinking of how to put up an exhibit and where exactly. And the big difference is that, well, the online exhibit can be online for a long, long time. You cannot exhibit manuscripts or primary materials of any sort and have them sit in the cases for months and at a time. That would not be good for the materials. So often with exhibits of that sort, you would try to publish a catalog that goes along with the exhibit so that people will have something of permanency to take back home. With digital exhibits, we have different problems. Let's say now we have to make sure that our images are well curated and also preserved.
And we also had to figure out what the correct DPI was for
Yes.
each scan.
And one thing that we learned along the way, of course, with help from my wonderful colleagues at Wellesley, I learned a lot along the way. I learned that you do not need to display a very huge image in your online PowerPoint or exhibit. All you need is something between 72 and 96 DPI. So you do not want to clutter your PowerPoints with huge images and they become very difficult to even open on the screen. So a lot of technical things like that that we needed to sift through and make sure that we standardize the process that we do things. But it's a totally different experience to do an online exhibit from working with placing actual manuscripts and printed materials in cases.
Yeah,
And
it's so
it's just-
easy with a manuscript, an exhibit of original material, to just take one out and put another one in. Takes just 30 seconds.
Yes.
But that's not how it is with a virtual one. Takes a lot of time to be sure that the image is right and everything looks exactly the way you want it.
But if you think of accessibility, digital is an incredible offering to the public because people everywhere around the world can all of a sudden see your exhibit. They
Yeah,
don't have to physically go and visit a location. But not to forget that looking at the original materials right in front of you, it's something that is incredibly powerful.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the real behind the scenes of all the things that we might not think of when it comes to putting together this exhibit. Diving a little bit more into the material, this exhibit is broken down into several periods of Hamilton's life. Mariana, I know you mentioned earlier that you're really fascinated by Hamilton's time during the Revolutionary War, but I would love to hear from both of you which period in the exhibit or in general about Hamilton's life most fascinates you.
Well, the whole Hamilton fascinates me
Yes.
from birth to today.
Yes.
Not only until the end of his life, but through today, because we see the results of his accomplishments through today.
And
So-
I keep thinking about the things that he did. He created the financial infrastructure of America. We are all living with that infrastructure that he created today. Our whole method of financing in the United States is something that Hamilton conceived. Now, obviously, there are new elements that he could not have known about. However, his vision was so good. And I just find that fascinating to be imagining his creative ability to bring us to where we are, to have enabled the United States to grow the way it did, to experience the capital raising things that happened, financing wars, for instance, not only on our own behalf, but raising capital to the extent that we could help other nations. We could finance the war effort material that other nations needed while we were doing that for ourselves. This is a big, big deal. Not every nation has that deal, and every nation would eagerly trade their capital markets for ours. we have terrific gems of capital markets. Sometimes if I'm, if I give a talk somewhere, I will begin by asking the audience, raise your hand if you know what the capital markets are. That stumps a lot of people. And I wanted to try to bring people closer to a clear understanding of how the markets work and why they are important.
Thank you, John. And diving even a little bit more micro, do you have a favorite image or a favorite document that's included in the exhibit? And Mariana, if you wanted to bring it up or if you just wanted to talk about it so people know to look for them on the exhibit.
Yeah,
I know that would be...
you know, reporters have been asking me that question for 50 years. In this exhibit, of course, I love the documents, as I mentioned, but I think my favorite image in this exhibit is the one that shows the moving the Grange, that was the image that was put together so that the Grange, there it is, you just had it. Yeah, that image to me is so amazing that they had to lift the Grange up to a level over the church that it had to get over and slide it forward on like a railroad track, and then they had to lower it down and ride around through Manhattan for several blocks. It just is an amazing moment to me. So that's my favorite.
And I'm sure, John, you couldn't have... I'm sure, John, when that was first published in the newspaper, you couldn't imagine that just a decade later, you'd be on the board of the AHA Society and being the official partners of the Grange. So it's incredible what the National Park Service has done to preserve the home's legacy on behalf of the Hamilton family.
Yes, but it's also a splendid contribution what the AHA Society has done to enhance the offerings of the Grange and to bring all of this wonderful stuff that Hamilton did to the attention of a wider audience. That's what we need to do. We need to understand the beauty and the creative, the immense creative contribution that was made during the federal period when 30-odd men got together for 3 months, wrote the Constitution, and here we are 200-odd years later, a real nation, unlike any other nation. It's quite a spectacular story.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. Well, I have many favorite images, but there is one that is very curious to me because it brings new information to us. This is a certificate of a share in the trust of the Alexander Hamilton estate. So after the death of Alexander Hamilton, people were concerned of how to raise money to save the Grange, and shares were being sold. And the one from the collection, John's collection, has a number 272. What caught my eye is that this is a number that no other historian knew that the numbers went that high. I consulted Ron Chernow's biography of Hamilton, and he was aware until that time of up to 100, less than 200 shares. And now I realized by looking at this number that actually many more shares were sold. And how would people know that? Only if they happen to see yet another of these certificates for a share. So it is fascinating to me that this all of a sudden tells us a more detailed story about what happened after Hamilton's passing. And another favorite of mine.
Well, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna show everyone. First of all, the Revolutionary War is an absolutely fascinating period for me. So the soldier in the Revolution section happens to be very long, but there is one image that touched me very much, and that was the rings, Eliza's ring. So 10 years ago or so, my husband Tom and I went to Columbia University. That's where the ring, Eliza's ring, is located. We went to the Rare Book and Manuscript Library, and we had the privilege to hold this ring in our hands. It was incredible. It was before Hamilton was so well known. We learned from the librarians, from our colleagues there, that actually no one had come to see this ring since they had gotten it, practically. So I just had this incredible privilege to hold it in my hand, and that was very meaningful to me. And so this image of something very, very small happened to be very meaningful.
And that phenomenon of that Columbia mentioned, that nobody came to see the ring, that is a problem with institutional collections of these kinds of material. And of course, I thought about my collection, and perhaps it ought to go to an institution and stay together. Well, that's a possibility, but what I realized was that it would go straight into a file drawer and would not be seen again, except maybe every 5 years, 10 or 20 pieces would be in an exhibit or something of that sort. And I feel that collectors are more interested in showing and telling than the institutions are. And so this collection my collection will be offered at auction later in this year. Hopefully that's a good decision.
Well, often libraries and institutions, they would focus along their work along their mission. So let's say in special collections, we focus on teaching classes. So the collections are used very widely very thoroughly in teaching. So students get the privilege to see a lot of items like that. But what happened with Columbia, of course, after the Hamilton musical came around, the ring was an exhibit, and now it would not be easy to go and ask to hold such an object because so many people want to hold it. It's not possible to accommodate that kind of handling of the material. It's very important to also preserve the material. So from now on, let's say it would be much easier to see that kind of material through exhibits. So if you, hopefully this pandemic will end soon, and we'll be able to once again go and look at the original objects in an exhibition case, which is a privilege indeed.
Thank you, Mariana. We do have just a few questions about some of the images you've discussed. Nolan Ash first wants to say that it was a great honor to be at his alma mater, Columbia Butler Library Rare Books Collection, when the AHA Society jointly hosted an exhibit there, including the ring and many other objects. That was another exhibit that we've put on in the past. We had a question from Bill, where the loyalty oath was from. Was that from the Columbia collections as well?
No, the loyalty oath is not, it's located in Washington.
Oh, in the National Archives?
Yes.
So some of the items included in the exhibit are from the National Archives, from on loan from Columbia University, and a few other lending institutions.
That's right. We have several materials from at least one on exhibit at the moment from the Museum of American Finance, one or two from Wellesley College, and some other institutions. Other images we have supplied from available images online.
And it's from you and Tom?
Yes, yeah, Tom and I lent as well an image from one of the materials that we have in our own collection.
Fabulous. We also have a question here and comment from Elizabeth and Tom Maddock. They say, it's really great that you have created an online exhibition. I'd also really love to visit in-person exhibits and museums in the near future. Any recommendations? My interests are primarily American history and American Revolution, excuse me.
Well, I would recommend highly, especially if you are visiting the New York area, the New York Historical Society regularly exhibits materials from that period. It is fascinating to visit. They have permanent collections as well, not only exhibits that are temporary. So it is a great place to stop in New York. Another wonderful museum is the Museum of the City of New York. They do have even some Hamilton objects. They're not always an exhibit. Just bear in mind that the museums anywhere around the world can never exhibit everything that they have. They always have to prepare temporary exhibits on certain topics to be able to feature little by little their extensive collections. But any kind of historical locations, I mean, let's not forget, of course, Hamilton Grange National Memorial is a historical place by itself. Any kind of historical societies, they would have often permanent exhibits, perhaps not very big, but on a specific topic. And it's wonderful to learn from historical societies and smaller places.
And the John Jay House is also available to visit. The Museum of American Finance does not have public exhibit space at this time. They had to leave their exhibit space because of a flood. And they expect to once again have exhibits, and that will be made public within a short time, I believe.
Fabulous. And the AHA Society does try to regularly share about Hamilton specific exhibits when we hear about them on our website and on our companion website, allthingshamilton.com. We try to share both permanent online exhibits as well as temporary exhibits that are in person. We do try to keep abreast as much as possible with that. So you can always check our websites or our social media for different Hamilton developments and for exhibits. And there was another question from Marty Lawndale about one of the images that was shared of the painting of the Dock of New York. She was curious because she said, didn't Hamilton arrive in Boston first? And she just wanted to know more about why that item was included.
Indeed, he arrived in Boston first, and he made his way straight down towards New York and New Jersey. So the reason that we showed this image is because it is close in time from the period when Hamilton would have been there, maybe even slightly earlier. And it will show, it will give you a sense of what New York looked like. So indeed, Alexander Hamilton arrived at Boston, but he made ultimately his home in New York. So it is, we thought that it would be fascinating to show this amazing image that I had never seen before.
Yes, and we wanted people
I'll just share it.
to have a sense of the environment, because lots of important things happen, but we don't always know about the environment in which they happen. So this is a very instructive image, and it's certainly a nice image. And I think it's very important to understand the environment in which important things that we may hold dear have occurred. So one of our objectives was to give a sense of that environment. I noticed that someone sent in a chat about the capital markets and what were they. And I didn't actually say what they were, but they are the stock market, the bond market, and the commodities market. And in those markets, large amounts of capital can be transferred very easily. And that ability is extremely important. And that is what one of the elements that makes the American capital markets so special.
We're just so excited about this exhibit. That's the next image that popped up, so I wanted to share with everyone. It's just so rare that people would see early bills like this. And we featured a few here in the exhibit. That's the front of a bill, and then we have the back of it as well, that people often don't even see. That's New Jersey colonial currency. Here's the back of the bill.
And in some of this currency, and right here, it says, "To counterfeit is death." So the colonials understood that the currency had to be reliable. And there were, of course, counterfeiting efforts, but they were shut down very rapidly in most cases.
Yeah, and all these elements in the decorative elements are very important in early currency, because if there is a slight change in it, you would know whether it is counterfeit. And that's why you see these little images here that come in different ways, and just all these little details make it so much more difficult to counterfeit, of course.
And those who have followed this particular collecting specialty of colonial currency, that market is very active, and it is a very exciting place, and the values have been increasing every year.
Well, we hope this is the first of multiple online exhibits, and we thank you again for bringing not only this exhibit together, but our awareness of everything that has gone into it. For those of you that are watching this that have not yet visited the exhibit, we do encourage you. You can visit the AHA Society, that's AHA.omeka.net. And there will also be a link on the AHA Society's website if you're more comfortable or more familiar with that webpage to visit it. And I would just like to close out this conversation by asking you both, What do you hope the viewers of the exhibit take away after having viewed all of these images and reading the labels that you've put together?
Well, my hope is that they will have a new feeling for the federal period, which is such an exciting period in American history, when so much happened that has lasted so long. And 30 men sat together and created the Constitution. And it was very hot in Philadelphia. And they met in a building in the City Tavern where they had decided that they would not let the windows be open because they did not want the public to hear any of the discussions. So that was a terrific effort that was given. I just hope that people will once again, after probably primary school or high school, get interested in the federal period once again, because it just contains so much wonderful stuff. And I want to just take a minute to thank all of the people that helped us so much to create the exhibit. And it was wonderful fun for us, but we also benefited greatly from the help that we got from other people in the AHA Society, like Nicole and Sergio and Rand, and all of the other scholars who we would call and say, you know, is this right, or is that something that should be mentioned, or whatever. And we are very grateful for that. We appreciate that effort very much.
Yes, and I'd like to add our appreciation for the editorial help, for the help from our intern, Megan Rahal, who helped us in the summer, for Tom Oller's help in editing the material, and Michael Newton as well, who so graciously helped us with editing some of our inaccuracies in the text and everything. So we're just absolutely thrilled to have had this circle around us, that so that our final product will be a little bit more accurate for you.
Yeah.
So we just personally, I hope that aside from enjoying the exhibit and looking at the wonderful images and seeing a new perspective through, well, in part through our eyes, I just hope that people will find in Hamilton's life an example in their own, because that's what I have done, and it has been so rewarding. Just Hamilton's life was dedicated to serving the public, serving our nation in so many different ways. It is incredible just to list, to enumerate everything that he was able to achieve in his relatively short life. So if anyone looks at the exhibit and learns at least one more thing that they didn't know about Alexander Hamilton, we would be happy to know that.
And we want you to love it.
Yes, we hope to be able to put up more exhibits and perhaps more narrow topics or anything like that. By no means this exhibit is exhaustive. One can never be exhaustive with the life of Alexander Hamilton.
Well said, Mariana. Well, thank you all again for attending this talk and for watching. As Mariana said, the AHA Society is always here as a resource, and you can email us and contact us through our website, either about this exhibit or any other project. And in the meantime, we thank you again for joining to commemorate Alexander Hamilton's birthday, born on the island of Nevis and son of the Caribbean and a founding father of the United States. So this is a very special way to mark his birthday with this exhibit. So thank you again to John and Mariana for this wonderful exhibit and program.
And perhaps, Nicole, may I just insert myself for a minute? This is Ambassador Hull.
Of course, Ambassador Hall. Yes, let us put you up so that people can see you on the screen. We are very honored by your presence.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I would like to express my sincere appreciation for the outstanding educational session that has been offered by both Mariana and Mr. Herzog. For me, it has been very, very informative. And I think, I spoke with, the head of the Nevis Historical Conservation Society. I don't know that he's actually listening, but I think it is very, very important for you to recognize that we do appreciate a great, great deal the work that the AHA Society and Mr. Herzog has done in actually sharing a few of those exhibits with us. I learned from Mr. Lupinacci this morning that the 31 images that were sent to Nevis are properly displayed in the museum that's there. So that's very, very important to us, because do keep in mind that a very large proportion of the visitors that we get are from the USA. And of course, many of them who travel, they're not only interested in sun and beach, but quite a few who do have the extra time, they would like to come over to Nevis and actually see the exhibits. Well, those exhibits that were shared with us will be very, very important in leaving them very fond memories, not only of Nevis, but the place where he was born, and learn a little bit more about the, the life that he lived. So I wanted to be here, to be able to say this and to express my sincere appreciation for what you've done. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Hall.
Thank you so much.
Ambassador Hall is the representative of St. Kitts and Nevis to the Organization of American States, and we've long enjoyed a great partnership with the Island of Nevis, the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society, and the Alexander Hamilton Museum. Mariana, could you talk, and John as well, I appreciate that Ambassador Hall brought up the other exhibit that has been in progress to be shown at the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society down on the island of Nevis. Would you like to just briefly share about that for those that might be interested?
Yes, the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society recently, in the middle of 2020, was able to donate a wonderful exhibit to be added to the displays at the Alexander Hamilton Museum in Charlestown in Nevis. And we are yet to add a little bit more information to supply to that exhibit. And that will be coming very shortly. But I would like to encourage everyone who has an opportunity to visit the amazing place that we call the birthplace of Alexander Hamilton. We have been more than once there. We have worked closely with the staff on the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society and visited the museum, but also visited the whole island and learn more about St. Kitts and Nevis in a way that you can never learn unless you are there.
Yes, it's a great place to visit. And the hotel on Nevis is out of this world. Wonderful.
Yes, the AHA Society has been friends of the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society for several years now, and we are very grateful for our continued partnership. So thank you again, Ambassador Hall, for representing Nevis on his birthday as commemoration tonight.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thumbs up all around.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and we hope you stay connected, and happy birthday, Hamilton. Goodbye.
Happy birthday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.